Financial review of the Department of Corrections. Will members please turn to the Law and Order Committee's report? And the question is that the report of the Law and Order Committee on the 2009-10 financial review of the Department of Corrections be noted.
Mr. Chair.
Honourable Judith Collins.
Mr. Chair, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to speak to this report in relation to the Department of Corrections, which I am extraordinarily proud of the work that they have done over the last year and the fact that they are, in fact, in my opinion, a standout department. And that's certainly something that wasn't true under the previous Labor government. Can I acknowledge, though, that we have, in this last year, had a tragedy happen in corrections with the death of our first corrections officer to have died on duty, Jason Palmer, and to acknowledge his loss and the loss that was for all of our staff, as well as I'm sure for many people in the country who felt very deeply for him and for his family. This, however, has, apart from Jason's very untimely death, been a fantastic year for corrections. We now have our staff turnover has been the lowest that it ever has been the last 5 years. We've had escapes down to the lowest level ever. So escapes from our prisons, the lowest level ever. Lowest ever, despite the fact we have more people in prison now than what we've ever had in the past. We also have the positive random drug tests down to the lowest level ever. Despite all the rhetoric from the previous government, the lowest level ever. We've got the Community Probation Service now working at levels it has never worked at before, doing outstanding work. And this was a part of the department that when we came into government, we came into a crisis with them. We also inherited a crisis in accommodation for prisoners. We found that we were suddenly faced with looking at whether or not we had to let prisoners out of their sentences earlier, and we certainly weren't about to do that. So we have now got almost 1,000 extra bunks from the double bunking that we put in to our prisons, and despite all the calling from the other side, the fact that they left us with a prison master crisis, not one word to congratulate our staff on the excellent work that they have done to be able to actually deal with the situation. And, of course, we've had the container cells. Everyone remember the container cells? Well, Labor said it wouldn't happen, it was a stunt, it wasn't going to be there. Well, I announced them in, I think, about August, and by September we got the funding approved. They started work about November, and March they were ready to go. So about 4 months to get these, and despite all the rhetoric about these would be slums, they would be inhumane. Now I'm told at Rimataka the prisoners are basically lining up to try and get into them because they're so good. They're some of the best accommodation we've got, and about a third of the price of a traditional build. So what we actually have is a department that is doing the most amazing work. In addition to that, it's rehabilitating people, because under Labor, only 500 prisoners could get into drug and alcohol rehabilitation a year. We are actually now, by the end of this year, we will have over 1,000 prisoners. So we will double it in the 3 years that we have been in office. And not only that, but we are now targeting people who are in prison on short sentences, but because basically under Labor they had to be there for years and years and years, and at the end of their sentence they'd finally get some help just before they went out. Now we're getting them while they're in early, and that actually means that these are people who are in prison for crimes that are not as bad as some others. And I think that's really important. Get them while they're young, get them while they're early in the system, so that we can get them out of the system and keep them out of the system. This is rehabilitation that works. And that member over there says violent crime's up. Well, I'd say to her, just wait for the crime stats next week, honey bun, because they won't be. Crime is actually coming down under a national government, and I am so thrilled that it is, because we are taking it very seriously. Very seriously. We take crime seriously, and we take victims seriously. And unfortunately, the previous government had absolutely no idea what to do. They were so soft on crime, they sent out the message to criminals that they could just keep coming back to jail because it was a nice warm place to be. Well, funnily enough, under a national government, what we're forecasting for prisons is that they were not going to grow to the same extent that they did under Labor. And that's because actually people are wanting to get out of prison, although Although what we are seeing as well is that, let's be sensible here, and I know it's difficult for the Labour Party, but rehabilitation is absolutely paramount when we're dealing with the prison population. It is absolutely paramount to get drug and alcohol rehabilitation both in prisons and in the community, and they never did it, and we are.
Chester Borrows.
Thank you, Mr.